getting excited and I start talking too fast, just go like this, or if I'm like just going too slow, go like that. Probably won't be going too slow, so I'm glad you guys are here, thank you, and if I had a clicker I would be able to do this talk tonight, but I guess I'm just going to wing it. This is the second part, by the way, of our brain fit talk. And one of the reasons being is obviously you can't separate the gut from the brain and the brain from the gut. And most people don't even think about it. They think that the gut is just this thing that we eat and it somehow magically converts food into, well, feces, if you will. And that's just its only job. And so tonight my job is to really transform your thinking. So is this their first workshop? Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who's it like their 5th workshop or 10th workshop, right? And I think one of the things is when you start thinking about it, there's the whole goal is that we're in here because we know what we get to learn. But think about everybody else out in the world that doesn't know what we know, literally. And that's why the hospitals are full. That's why people are sick and suffering out there. And that's why I take this time to do this, because if only one of you were here, and that was my first class, there was only one person, and I hoped he didn't show up, because I was so afraid of talking in front of people. I was like, please don't show up, please don't show up. He actually showed up, but I did it for him, and it transformed his life, and that's why I do these on a regular basis. So, couple things, couple rules. Number one, the only thing that I ask of you is you actually take this information and do something with it. Okay? Like, it doesn't do any good to have notes and then just put them away, or like, hey, that was a really good class. That's like the worst thing you can tell me. Hey, Dr. Osborne, that was a really good class. I'm like, what'd you learn? Oh, there's just so much information I just can't remember. Okay, like, so take some information and do something with it. Like, we do everything we possibly can. The notes will be online. They're on the website. The video for this will be on there, so you can go back and re-look at it. So just take something. And then the other thing that I ask of you is that you actually tell somebody else. Tell somebody else outside of this office that doesn't know this information, so that we can have an impact and we can create a wave in society there. So, I'm not going to do that one. Come on. Go up behind my back. Oh, hold on. Well, maybe that. Come on. There we go. No, that didn't work either. There we go. So what I wanted to do is a lot of times we don't understand this whole digestive process, and really what I'm going to do is we're going to start from the basics and build from there. Because what happens is when you understand how your body works, it literally is magnificent. Like, you'll be blown away how intelligent it is. And if I was to tell you that digestion starts with the nervous system, you'd be like, what? How does that happen? But think about it. Think about right now, if in my hand I actually had a lemon, and you could smell it. And you could just smell that lemon, and you could just, and you'd peel it back, and you could just kind of see it, and you know what it's going to taste like. And then all of a sudden you take a big bite right out of that lemon right now. Did anybody get like a little bit of a release in the back of their throat there? There's not even a lemon here. Does that make sense? Like, your brain actually told you to prepare yourself to digest. There was a Pavlov who was famous for his dogs. What he would do is he would ring a bell, and then the dogs would start to salivate, and they found all their digestive enzymes would start working. Literally, just the thought of eating starts the digestive process. And so when the first thing that happens is we actually have to put food in our mouth. That is a conscious thought that we get to have, by the way, what we put in our mouth. But when the food goes into our mouth, the first thing that happens is that all the digestive juices start there. There's something called serum amylase, and what serum amylase does is it actually breaks down carbohydrates. So literally, digestion of carbohydrates starts in your mouth. So next time, like, you're trying to wolf down the fries and just like feeding as many of them into your mouth as you possibly can, and then later on, what happens is that those fries don't get digested, and then you wonder why you feel bloated and sick. Is because those fries never got digested, and they go down into your intestines, and they have to ferment there. Second problem is that you're eating fries. Okay, so let's substitute for like something else that's a carbohydrate or something like that. So then what happens is it goes into our mouth. We start to digest our food. That's why your mom always told you to chew your food, right? It wasn't because it was gross that you were just like swallowing and you want to get out of the house, but it's about the digestive process. So the first part is you can actually take time to eat. Chew your food, talk smaller bites, because you're pre-digesting your food so you won't get that gut bomb. Then what happens is you swallow the food and something magical occurs. it stretches the esophagus, and when it stretches the esophagus, there's something called the gastrocolic reflex. And what it does is that sends a message from your esophagus all the way down to your intestines right here. It causes this valve to open up, and everything that's in your small intestines starts to filter into your large intestine there. That's why if you ever notice kids, they eat, they go to the bathroom. They eat, they go to the bathroom. The average person should be going to the bathroom between 2 and 4 times a day if you have a healthy gut. Just to put that in perspective. So when you eat, you're supposed to have to go to the bathroom there. Then what happens is, it comes down here, there's a little sphincter right here, it goes into your stomach, and glorious things happen in there. There's pepsin in there, there's hydrochloric acid in there, and what happens in there is it actually digests proteins. It breaks down fats in your stomach. And so when there's some cells called the goblet cells, and they release this mucus, because guess what would happen? If you were to take that hydrochloric acid, and it would eat through your stomach. It literally can eat through metal, it can eat through enamel of your teeth there. That's why if somebody's a bulimic, their teeth will rot away there. But what happens is the intelligence of your body, it produces that mucus to protect your stomach. And so as more acid goes up, more mucus goes up. And guess what also happens? When you have acid in your stomach, that sphincter right there gets tighter, because its job is to not let that acid go up there so that you don't get, what? Heartburn, right? Okay, so then what ends up happening is it comes down here, it goes into the duodenum. In the duodenum, your body has nervous system signals in there that you actually have about 100 million nerve endings in your intestines to be able to send information to your brain and back down to your body. It registers that there's fat. It sends a message to the gallbladder to start dumping in there, and it breaks down and emulsifies the fat. And as it starts to come down through your intestines, it becomes more and more alkaline, and less acidic as it comes down. And as that happens, then your different nutrients at different acidities will actually be able to be absorbed. So the same things that are absorbed here aren't going to be absorbed here. That's how complicated this process is. And the good news is you don't have to figure it out. It's already done for you. It's already pre-planned. The software in you is amazing. It's infallible there. Unfortunately, it's operator error many times. Then what happens is we come into the large intestine. And when we get into the large intestine, this is where about 90% of the water in the food that you eat is absorbed. And this is the final little bit, and then it comes out. That's it. How cool is that? Bet you didn't know that. So good. So now what happens is, what I want you to understand is how amazing your body is. So a lot of times what we do is we damage it. What if you eat a chicken bone, for example, right? And it punctures a hole into the side of your intestine there. Or what if you have damage to your intestine of some way or shape or form there? Well, I just found this out only because it just came out. There's a new organ in your body. They didn't even know what it was. They just literally found this out. It's called the greater omentum. And they used to think it was just a fat pad. It would just sit there and it would sit right on top of your intestines. It was between your intestines and the wall of your stomach there. What they found out is that it's actually an organ, because it's intelligent. What it does, they find, is that when there's damage to the intestine, the omentum actually moves to that area of damage. And what it does is it attaches itself to the intestine. And when it attaches itself to the intestine, it actually releases stem cells. Have you guys heard of stem cell research? Literally, it releases stem cells in that area to rebuild that area. That's why, and then what it also does, when it's done, it actually moves back to the center and stays right there. Now think how cool this is. So then it's right here, it's laying right up against your intestines, and what it does is it also sucks toxins out of your intestines. And guess where those toxins go? On the outside of the omentum. It puts it right into that belly. So that's why when we start to see people getting more and more toxic in that toxic belly, that's where, because your greater omentum is actually taking those toxins out and putting them into the belly there. So the reason why I put this in is, I didn't know it until now that I know it, and you guys know it. You probably know more now than probably 99% of doctors out there about the greater omentum. But what I wanted you to understand is that every single day we're finding things out about the body that we didn't know. We just didn't know. They just found out there's a new muscle, a ligament in the leg. They just found out a new muscle that they never even knew about. And I thought we'd already been figured out. And the problem is that science will never catch up to how amazing your body is. And as long as we know that, we're always going to be behind. So this right here, has anybody ever heard of diverticulitis? And I'm going to go over just some of the most common things that people hear about, because we're going to talk about gut health, but it's all going to tie back in, I promise. So diverticulitis diverticuli are holes that somehow form in the intestine. How the heck do we get pouches in the intestine? Like, why would that randomly happen to one person? And what happens is the common thinking is, well, it just happens. So just to let you know that nothing ever just happens in the human body. There's always a process. And so think about this. You have this tube, and it contracts. The large intestine, that contracts. And when it does, and what happens if there's no contraction? If it's not contracting, the pressure is going to have to go out sideways there. And then what ends up happening is as the pressure goes out sideways, the food will get deposited in here. There's only two reasons why we'd ever get a diverticuli, which is one is that it's a nerve issue, or two, that it's a blood issue. And that means that there's something is damaging and weakening that wall. But the only treatment that we have right now is if you have a diverticuli, what we do is we say, oh, what we want you to do is actually just take antibiotics because we've got to fight that infection there, and we want to have you take anti-inflammatories. Well, the problem is that if you cut yourself, inflammation is part of the healing process. So when we're taking an anti-inflammatory, what we're doing is that we're actually stopping that inflammatory process. Literally, anti-inflammatories damage the intestinal lining there. So somebody that takes chronic anti-inflammatories, they one day wake up and they can't figure out why they're starting to have these diverticuli. Well, the problem is that they've been damaging it for years and years and weakening and stopping that healing process. You always have to know that your body's constantly in a state of healing there. So what is the number one recommendation, if anybody knows anybody with diverticuli, what do they tell you not to eat? Popcorn and seeds, exactly. So let's go back here. So there's a difference. The world is flat until you know it's round. Does that make sense? Like we have these things that we keep on repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating, but when they actually study people, they find that when they did a study of 47,000 people, that the people that actually ate the popcorn, the people that actually ate the seeds, they actually had a lower risk for diverticulitis. Why would that be? Because we live in a stupid world. Does that make sense? We just kind of keep on following the things that we do, and I'm sorry I'm a little hot on this, but what ends up happening is we do the same things, we never ask questions, and when we don't ask questions, we end up with stupid health and stupid health care. Because we're not even reading our own journals, what the journals are saying. What they find is that it's the fiber, right? Now we're missing fiber, and the diverticuli get worse. We need fiber in our diet to be able to get the feces through there. So the recommendation to avoid these foods and prevent diverticular complications should be reconsidered. That's not mine. That's not me. That's the Journal of the American Medical Association. That's over a decade ago. How many people have had to have surgery unnecessarily because of the wrong treatment protocols? You're either doing the right thing or you're doing the wrong thing. We don't want to wait until we're in crisis here. All right, so now we're going to talk about GERD. How about, has anybody ever heard of GERD, like heartburn? So GERD, think about this. What do we take when we have heartburn? Yeah, so we take like Magnesium or the purple pill or whatever, right? We take something to get rid of the heartburn. Well, the problem is it dilutes the acid, and guess what it does? It actually then that sphincter doesn't tighten up as much. And so when that sphincter doesn't tighten up as much, guess where the acid goes? Right up into that area there. So that once again, stupid world. Like how do you not know how the human body works? You're either treating symptoms or you're treating functional issues. You have to either address the symptom or the function. You can't do both of them. The other thing that we have to look at is when we stand like this, there's a part of our body called the diaphragm, and then the esophagus comes right through that diaphragm. So when we're like this, there's a flap that goes over and keeps the acid from coming out. When we go into a posture like this, what it does is it pulls that flap open. So how many people spend their whole day like this, right? Or maybe what happens is, and that's why when we have a lot of people that get over GERD, and just by changing their posture there. Or how many people actually drink water when they eat? Because what you're doing is when you drink water when you eat, you're diluting the enzymes in your mouth. So you can't properly digest your carbohydrates. When you're drinking water, you're diluting the hydrochloric acid in your stomach, so you can't properly digest the fats and the proteins in your stomach there. And so my number one recommendation for you is that, look, if you got stomach issues, don't drink when you're eating. Don't drink and eat. okay? Then don't drink and eat, because take about half an hour before you eat, half hour after you eat, and don't drink water or anything in between. Now, on occasion, if you have to have wine when you're going out to dinner, you have my blessing. All right. So, but what I want to tell you, the reason why I bring this up is how many people are suffering from heartburn that you know, right? But they say, well, you have to take like the antacid, because if you don't, you're going to get stomach cancer. Well, let's look at what the research says. Well, so when we look at proton pump inhibitors and risk of gastric cancer, when they actually look at a large sample of people, they found that the largest number of people that took the largest number of prescriptions for the longest period of time were the ones that had, there was what they call a reverse causation. They actually got worse. They actually are much more likely to have stomach cancer if you actually took your heartburn medication. The problem is heartburn medication is typically, they say you're supposed to have it for no more than 14 days, 3 times a year.
Oh my God.
The average person is taking it for a minimum of 6 months. And now it's over the counter. So they don't even know how long people are taking it there. The problem also is that when you take that, now you can't get the nutrients from the food, and they find that when we start looking with the purple pill right here, they start to find is that the long-term use, it doubles the risk of gastric cancer. In fact, what we find right here is it goes up a 43% increased risk for gastric cancer for people that are taking the purple pill. 43%. And we're trying to prevent a problem that we create, or create a problem that we prevent. Maybe I'm just confused here, but maybe what we need to do is look at what is the cause rather than treating the symptom there. So here's the thing. The other thing is that they create nutrient deficiencies. So one of the number one nutrient deficiency, according to the FDA, is it says that it's actually magnesium levels. You absolutely need magnesium for every single muscle in your body to fire. Literally, your brain doesn't work without magnesium. Nothing works without magnesium there. And here's some of the side effects. Muscle spasm, irregular heartbeats. Did you know that one of the number one side effects for like heartburn medications is actually heart arrhythmias? And one of the number one side effects for heart arrhythmia medication is actually heartburn? Where do you go from there? Like, you're always balancing. I want to get off this, but then I got to get on this, but I got to get off this, but I got to get off this. And that's where we... What's that?
You go to Dr. Osborne.
Yeah, there you go. Convulsions, seizures, cognitive decline. As you drop magnesium, your brain stops functioning. And remember, we talked about, as your brain stops functioning, the number one job of your brain is actually to suppress the stress response in your body. 90% of your brain's energy is designed to suppress the stress response. And so as the brain declines, your body loses the ability to suppress the stress response. That's why, as you see, as your grandma, your mom was totally cool when she was young, and now she's older and she's like all worried about everything, right? She's like totally strung out, driving down the road, and you know, what's going to happen this and this and this and this, because they don't have the ability, and we look to deal with their stress response. And as we look as people get older, what are the number one issues that they're having? High blood pressure, stress response. Gastrointestinal issues, stress response, because when we have stress in our brain, it shuts down the blood flow to our intestines, and our body can't actually digest food. We also look at type 2 diabetes. Low magnesium, people, you can have perfect eating and you can get diabetes or blood sugar issues if your magnesium is low there. But what if you have a person that eats bad, right? They have diabetes, they're taking their medication to get rid of their heartburn there, but then they're making them deficient in magnesium, so now they have diabetes here, and then they're taking insulin, which increases the risk of cancer, and oh, by the way, the heartburn medication raises your risk of cancer by 43%. Do you see the downward spiral that happens? And that's what I really want to get to. So, did anybody ever tell you that might have been like a bacteria in your intestines? You guys have heard about this, right? Like, it's a bacteria in my intestines that causes ulcers in the stomach. Well, 50% of the world's people, when they test them, actually have that bacteria. So maybe it's necessary for something, we just don't know what it is, and maybe the problem is when it gets out of balance. Does that make sense? Maybe there's something that's creating an imbalance in that bacteria. And so the last time somebody said, hey, look, you have ulcers, maybe what we could do is try some fermented milk and whey protein, because that's what the research shows that can actually have a dramatic impact on balancing out the bacteria in somebody's stomach. I don't know, but this was actually in the World Journal of Gastrointestinal Health. Did your GI specialist ever tell you that?
No.
It was emphatic. 100%. Oh, by the way, do you know what the side effects were? None. Okay. So then we'll talk about, we'll go down, we kind of came out of the stomach, we're now at the gallbladder. And then the problem is that when we have our gallbladder removed, see what the gallbladder does is it's the reservoir that keeps all of the bile in there. So then the bile constantly drips down into the intestines. Remember when I talked about the intestines go from acidic down to alkaline as we move down there. So the more acidic that area is, the more likely bad bacteria, the acidic bacteria are going to grow, and you're going to get an imbalance of bacteria higher up into this area. Not only that, but it causes wear and tear. You're not able to break down your food. You have digestive issues there. So if you have had your gallbladder removed, first of all, you have to know that you have to start juicing. Number two, you have to take bile salts. You have to start taking digestive enzymes, because you don't have free license to eat the same way that you ate anymore, because the consequences are disastrous in the long term there. All right, so now we're going to go into the gut-brain connection. And we've already talked about it a little bit, but I love this one. Look, I know this sounds crazy, baby, but I feel like we have a real connection here. Well, I always say that, trust your gut's feeling. I mean, seriously, have you ever been anxious about something, and then you started to get nauseous, right? There's an immediate connection, and what ends up happening is the brain, there's a nerve called the vagus nerve, and I've talked about this because it's my favorite nerve in the entire body. That should be like my password on my computer, which it's not, but it's but vagus means the wandering nerve, and it's the largest cranial nerve. It comes right out of here, right where that bony bump is right here. It comes right out of there, and it comes down, and it literally goes to every one of the organs and all your digestive organs, your heart and your lungs. The vagus's job is to suppress that stress response there. And in fact, it has millions and millions of connections between all of your organs in your digestive system there. But it's directly connected to the brain. It's the main line. So that's why a lot of times when people come in, if they have upper cervical issues, imagine this person, right? They're sitting at their computer like this, compressing their vagus nerve, inhibiting their stress response, right? And then they're going like this, in this position, compressing, stretching that flap that goes to their stomach, and they're not able to breathe in this manner, and they can't figure out why, because when you breathe, you're supposed to be able to pump your intestines to help things move along, and they can't figure out why they just don't feel good, and they can't digest their food, and why they have digestive issues there. Well, that's what it is. So, second brain. And this is why they call it the second brain, is because there's a system called the enteric nervous system. And that system actually comes from the same stem cells when you were as a fetus, like a little itty bitty embryo. The same enteric nervous system was the same one that developed your brain. So they're literally connected. They're one and the same. That's how powerful it is. And in fact, that enteric nervous system, it makes something called serotonin, which is your happy hormone. It makes 90% of the serotonin in our entire body there. It makes something called GABA, which allows your body to stay calm and relaxed there. So think about this. If we have damage to our intestines, well, we're not going to be able to produce the serotonin, which makes us happy. We're not going to be able to produce the GABA, which makes us calm and relaxed there. And then we're going to be inflamed, which is going to inflame our brain and put us into an anxiety state. So what I really need you to understand is, one is not necessarily more important than the other, because your brain tells your intestines your digestive system what to do, but your digestive system creates most of the neurotransmitters that tells your brain how to fire. So sometimes people are like, well, I want to get adjusted, and I want to get my brain working to communicate with my body, but I don't really want to change my nutrition. I just kind of like my hamburgers, and I like sugar. I really like sugar. But how come I'm not healing, Dr. Osborne? How come I'm not having miracles in my body? Well, because there's 5 essentials, right? There's not one. There's a primary one that says we have to protect the nervous system, but there's 5 essentials. You have to do all of them because all of them support this process. So when we look at what happens is the problem is the bad gut will also create a weak immune system. It's stated that 90% of our immune cells are actually produced in our gut. So imagine we're going into the cold and flu season, right? And we'll talk about this in a second. What does the average person do? First of all, they stress themselves out like crazy, right? So they stress themselves out like crazy. It causes a constriction of the blood vessels going into their intestines. They're not digesting their food right. They get inflamed. They're not sleeping because that's your rest and digest time. So now you're not going to be able to digest your food very well. And then we eat all kinds of stuff, right? I promised my wife, like I caught myself once. So we eat all kinds of stuff. We eat sugars and all the things that we know that we shouldn't, that create acidity within our system and inflammation within our system. We know that we do everything that we possibly can to damage our GI system there. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, like I got the flu. Like, how did that happen? Like, it's like just this somehow attacked us, right? Like some virus just like magically chose you and not you. See, viruses don't choose you. You choose the virus. You don't catch a cold. You have to receive it. You have to be sitting there and you have to be sick. Your immune system has to not be working to get sick. And once you realize that, then you can take responsibility for your health. It's not somebody else's fault. It's always our fault based on the things that we do. Sorry to say it like that, but it is true. Because what they find is that when they actually do flu tests, they did a research experiment where they literally took the flu and injected it up somebody's nose. And they had a group of 50 different participants there. And less than half of the people got sick. Like, that's not somebody sneezing on you, and that's not you touching an escalator railing. That's literally injecting the flu into your nasal passages, and only half the people got sick. So maybe it wasn't the virus. Maybe it was you. So what we have to really look at is that immune system. So our weak vitamin deficiencies, we need when we have a high carb diet there, we have what we call SIBO, or small bacteria overgrowth in the intestines. And what ends up happening is everything is perfectly balanced. We go from acid to alkaline. As we start to change and our diet becomes more acidic, what ends up happening is the bacteria that used to be down here, now they become more acidic all the way through there. Those are the bad gut bacteria, and they create bad problems. You have to have the right bacteria in the right place. Inadequate sleep. Guess what we don't do now because it's dark outside? I don't want to go outside and exercise. Are you kidding me? Digestive stress and unbalanced hormones. So just to remember, whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut. What happens in the gut happens in the brain. And so what ends up, the brain tells the gut to actually move. It tells the nutrients where to go. It keeps the microbes in balance there. And then the gut, the microbiota, and they actually call that another organ because you have about 100 billion different bacteria in your intestines. There's actually more bacterial cells in the human body than there are actually in bacterial cells than human cells in the human body. So you're more of a bug than you. So literally when you're taking an antibiotic, you're literally killing part of who you are, but you don't even know it there. You can't figure out why it's making us sick. But these make us how we perceive the world. And I actually brought this in here because I had to read this to you. And I thought this just came out. Your intestinal organisms or microbiome participate in a wide variety of bodily systems. Immunity, detoxification, inflammation, neurotransmitter and vitamin production, nutrient absorption, whether you feel hungry or full. So maybe it's not you that's telling yourself that you don't have willpower. Maybe it's the bacteria that are in your intestines telling your brain that you're either hungry or full there. Where did I go? How you utilize carbohydrates and fats. All these processes lead into whether you have chronic health issues like allergies, asthma, ADD, cancer, type 2 diabetes, dementia. And what you might not know is that your microbiome also affects your mood, your libido, and even your perception of the world and the clarity of your thoughts. A dysfunctional microbiome could be at the root of your headaches, your anxiety, and your inability to concentrate, or even your negative outlook on life. Think about how powerful that is. Like if somebody just knew that, then that's why I'm having this class. That's what stimulated this class, by the way, was knowing this. Because I knew that this should be filled up with every single person in the world. So when we start looking at anxiety, we look at, we talked about serotonin, but there's also another one that called dopamine, which is our satisfaction hormone. That's also produced in the intestines there. By the way, did you know that serotonin is necessary for you to have good bone health? And so when you have too much serotonin, like somebody's taking an antidepressant, one of the side effects is actually osteoporosis. Who would have known? Maybe we know that serotonin is necessary for clotting. Like if you're having clotting issues and too many platelets, that's probably because we have too much serotonin issues there. Serotonin is designed for you to have peristalsis. Your intestines can't even contract if you don't have serotonin there. When we start looking at serotonin, its job is not only is mood, but it's also shoot, and that one just slipped out of my mind. Sorry about that. I might need to work on my brain fit a little bit more. But then we also talked about dopamine. That's also produced in your intestines there. So when we have too much serotonin, it creates anxiety. Just what I'm trying to get at is your microbiome and your intestines are really the key to how you feel. Serotonin helps you sleep at night. When your serotonin levels are high, you're going to sleep, and you're going to wake up feeling refreshed. When they're low, you're not going to wake up feeling refreshed. You're going to wake up feeling groggy there. So the big key, here's the steps, okay? I'm trying to keep them simple. I used to give like 20 steps. So the first thing is when we fix our brain. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to decrease our stress, and we're going to increase our sleep, and we're going to get our power turned on. Just doing 3 things there are incredibly important. And the cool thing is that it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. And that's going to be a big key. So the problem is when you have less sleep, do you feel like you're able to react and like have good conversations with people, or you're much more reactive, right? So like literally the start of this starts in the PM and it ends in the AM. And it's something that you have to do every day, but you have to start making better decisions. And we're going to talk about how to fix that. Oh, by the way, the last part, fixing your gut. We got to repair the leaky gut. We're going to teach you how to do that tonight. So there's 5 essentials, and I just want to remind these to you guys. They're essential. They're not the 5 options, okay? If there were the 5 options, I'd be like, hey, choose your favorite one and just run with it and see where it goes. It's like a plant. A plant needs to have sunlight. It needs to have fertilizer. It needs to have water. It needs to have dirt. It can't have toxic soil. And so if it doesn't have all of those things, and maybe if you like to talk to plants, maybe it needs to be talked to. But if it doesn't have those things, that plant can't ever be healthy the way that it was intended to. So the big thing is in fixing our brain, we got to know that stress damages sleep, okay? Stress literally damages sleep because what it does is it inhibits our body's ability to hit that deep REM state. So when you're under stress, we can't pretend that it doesn't exist, but what we have to do is start to make patterns with our sleep process. I talked about serotonin and dopamine. Sorry, I'm going to move on from that. So the next one, I'm going to slow down a little bit on this. Sympathetic and parasympathetic. This is going back to what we talked about last time. And you have 2 parts of the nervous system. You have the sympathetic part, which is your fight or flight, and you have your parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. And so reason why I put this right over here is you look at somebody that's sick, okay? And what you'll typically find is they have dry mouth, right? They have a hard time breathing. They have maybe a high heart rate. They have digestive issues. A lot of times they're constipated there. They have high glucose levels, like diabetes. They're kind of constantly under stress. They might even have bladder issues. So like think about like somebody scares you. Like you don't hold your bladder, you let go of your bladder. Does that make sense? So as people get older, what we start to find that they have the constipation and they have the. So what I want you to understand is that as the brain breaks down, the ability to resist these things happen. And so we have to look at everything in our life that builds our parasympathetic system there. And so the parasympathetics, all of a sudden you get better heart rate, better contractility. The gallbladder starts to work instead of getting clogged up there. The bladder actually stays better. Somebody comes in, they're like, I have a bladder issue. I'm like, no, you probably have a stress issue, first of all. Let's look at your stress issue before we look at your bladder issue there. So the big thing is about turning your power on. Look, I'm going to talk about this till the cows come home, but the one thing that I need you to understand is that when I talk about turning your power on, what I want you to understand is that when there's a process called dysautonomia, which is an imbalance in your nervous system, when your spine is subluxated, and that's the term that we use when it's not straight from the front, it doesn't have its nice curve. When your spine's not moving properly, it's a physical stress to your body that's with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And until you understand that, you'll never understand the value of your adjustment there. And what ends up happening is that the subluxation alters the balance between sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So literally alters the balance between aging and not aging. It alters the balance between stress and not stress. Have you ever gotten off the table and be like, after being adjusted, be like, oh my gosh, I'm so much more stressed? Or you get off, you're like, oh, okay, I feel better there, right? And so when we look at one of the ways that we test this is we actually look at the tone of your nervous system. So a lot of times when I show these scans to people, they're like, oh, those are pretty colors. What do they mean? So tonight, I'm going to tell you about these, and you're going to understand why it's so important to me when I look at that. See, stress affects everything. It causes dilation and constriction of blood vessels. And what's interesting is that when we're looking at this, we're looking at the temperature from right to left as we come down there. The temperature should be symmetric there. Well, we're also looking at two parts of your nervous system. We're looking at the temperature from side to side. We're also looking at muscle activity. I'm going to make this short and sweet because I want to make sure that you understand this. There was a study right here, and what they said was, is if we are 0.3 degrees off, I want you to remember 13%. What does that mean? If there's an imbalance of 0.3 degrees on somebody's thermography scan, what they found that 13% of people actually have an active pathology at wherever that nerve goes to. Think about that. What if it's 1.2 degrees Celsius off? Look at the number, 96% have an act. Now, whether it's symptomatic or not, because we know that most organ pathologies, they don't all of a sudden they're not in crisis there. But if I'm looking at your scan and you're 3 standard deviations off, and those are the nerves that go into the heart, I'm looking at that and saying we have issues there, and we have to address it. And that's why I high five you when you're all green and you have less and less color. Look at this. When asymmetries, this was another study that they did. And what they actually did is they took the thermography and they ran it down spines of people that they had already done MRIs on. And they'd already done nerve conduction studies to see where there's damage to a nerve. And what they were able to be was specific. That they were able to detect nerve root impingement 94.7% of the time. At the exact level was 87%. Almost 9 out of 10 times, by rolling that little thing that we have down there, they're able to detect nerve root impingement. So think about this. If they're able to detect nerve root impingement, and that same test lets us know where organ pathology is, you start to see the connections coming together there. That's why when we look at things that impact that nervous system, that's why I scan you. Why else would we do a re-exam? I don't have to do that, right? I want to know what your nervous system looks like. I want to know what the stresses are going on in there. I want to know what the structure looks like. I want to know what the function of your nervous system looks like, because what if you're 1.2 degrees Celsius off and you don't even know it? Wouldn't you want to know? Yeah. So this is what a balanced nervous system looks like. When it's under-aroused, we have easily distracted, we have all these issues there. Over-aroused, cold hands, cold feet because the blood vessels constricting there. Poor immune system, racing mind there. An exhausted nervous system. This is cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, diabetes, multiple sclerosis. You'll start to see most of these things when people come in and they have autoimmune issues, they're end-stage stress responses. It's an end-stage response to the body not being able to adapt. And when we adjust somebody, this is just from a recent study, it literally decreases. All these are indicators of how somebody is able to, the stress levels. Every single one of the indicators, after somebody gets adjusted, it actually shows that they have a positive response, like their stress level goes down. So when I'm talking about turning your power on, it's not talking about, oh, the light switch on. Literally, it is flipping a switch. We're flipping on your brain so your brain can actually control your body at a higher level so your body can function. And when you do that, one of the first things that we actually put on your first re-exam was, are you sleeping better? That's one of the first things that we put under there. Because that's one of the first things that happen. People start sleeping better there. So when we're looking at the 7 ways to sleep, so if you get your power on, second, and I'm going to put this up. This will be uploaded tomorrow morning. But we want to start the sleep process. There's 7 steps to it. And if you're having challenges, a lot of times the worst thing that you can do is go to sleep and try to be like this. I'm going to sleep, right? And you get more and more frustrated, more and more angry. But really what you have to really look at is your routine. Your routine is the foundation of how you sleep. And if how your sleep isn't working, it's probably your routine that's not working. And so a lot of our routines are bad routines, so we need to start looking at new rituals. And a lot of times, starting a 10-minute pre-sleep ritual there. And then you start a new morning routine. How do you start your morning? Do you roll over, check your phone, look at all the stresses of the day, right? Do you know what I mean? Are you checking your email of what you missed in the last 12 hours? Or do you go outside, take a moment to breathe and to relax and to start your day? And because remember, how you start your day is how you end your day, and how you end your day is how you start your day. See, it's a cycle. It's not like you have a new day. That new day is a continuation of yesterday. So we look at our routines there. Then the next thing is we find out what helps you calm down. So we know what stresses us out. Everybody knows what stresses them out, but nobody focuses attention on what calms you down. Remember, Mother Teresa used to always say, I'd never go to a war protest, but I'll always go to a peace march, right? You can focus on lack, or you can focus, the human nature is to focus on what breaks us down and to suppress people and to beat people up. But we have to overcome that. We have to find out what actually calms us down, what is stressing us at work. We have to look at those things and be able to identify those things as we're going through our day. And then as we start going on, then we have to really start knowing that we have to incorporate exercise. And then we have the sleep goal to be able to sleep 9 to 10 hours. Whoa, I don't want to sleep. I lose like half my day. That's crazy, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, I have to go to sleep when it gets dark? Yeah. Like, it's kind of a good idea. That's why God actually takes away the sun in the middle at night. Otherwise you'd be up all the time. And still having trouble, you got to cut out the caffeine. Who on the Brain Fit Challenge cut out caffeine, by the way? Oh, good. Well, good. Did it help? Oh, so it's easy to cut it out when you never do it. Good. All right. So this is where we're going to start the process. The first leg is understanding the leaky gut. And so what happens is when we have intestinal inflammation in the gut lining, and we're going to talk about how to get that, we get malabsorption of nutrients. Most specifically, is vitamin B12 and magnesium. Those are the two main things that we have. The problem is vitamin B12 is your nervous system vitamin. And that's when people are under stress, they burn through their vitamin B12, and so they can't adapt to stress anymore. Kind of interesting. By the way, then we get this immune response because our immune system's under threat, and then we start to develop gastrointestinal issues and food intolerances. Like, how do you all of a sudden not be able to eat a food that you've eaten your whole life? Does that make sense? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, how does somebody start to get allergies, adult onset allergies? Like has anybody ever gone to the doctor like, oh yeah, it's just allergies? What are you talking about? I've never had allergies before. Maybe that was just the way I was born, but like, how do you catch an allergy? That makes no sense. But until we deal with that, the next stage is autoimmune diseases there. And this is critical because a lot of times we think, why would the body ever attack itself? No, the body's been trying to defend itself for a long time before we get to this point. So what ends up happening is that, for example, this is a gluten receptor. You've heard of gluten. So gluten is one of those things that's out there, and what ends up happening with gluten is as it hits the cell wall, there's something called zonulin that's released. When zonulin is released, it actually causes it inhibits the pores that protect. What ends up happening is you have pores, and they constrict. They constrict like this. When zonulin hits them, those pores open up. Now, bacteria, viruses, food particles, medications, little particles of proteins are actually able to get into your bloodstream there. Your body sees those things as threats, as invaders, and what it does is it mounts a massive immune response there. And that immune response actually creates it causes the pores to open up more. And as those pores open up more stuff pours in there. That's what a leaky gut is. It literally is a systemic immune response, literally affecting every single thing in your body. And so when we look at some of what ends up happening is that happens, then we get food intolerances, we get our immune system, and we get our autoimmunity there. That's what leaky gut is, and it's caused by stress, toxins, food particles, drugs, pathogens, all those things that should have been filtered out get into that gut. What I need you to understand, though, is how brilliant and amazing your body is. 50% of the bacteria inside of our body, we don't even know what they are. Like science hasn't even identified over 50% of the bacteria that are in your body. We don't even know what they are, what they do, or anything. But we do know that we can kill them with an antibiotic, but we don't know what the outcome is there. And bacteria, most of it, this was kind of a very interesting article in which they were talking about our bacteria in our intestines, they actually swap with our DNA. Literally, they're changing DNA in our body all the time as they replicate. So if you're having healthy bacteria, you're actually changing DNA in your cells with these bacteria at all the times. Do you see how important this is? It's not just about serotonin. It's not just about going to the bathroom. It literally is about every single aspect of your body there. So when we fix the gut wall, we'll reduce the permeability, we reduce the inflammation, but the problem is that there's three main issues that I'm seeing today. Antibiotics, exposure to environmental toxins, and inappropriate food choices there. So those are the three main things we're going to talk about. So number one, I just really want to talk about immunity. So there's two types of immunity. First one is T1 immunity. T1 immunity is the type that gets actually passed on to your children. So when a child is born, literally the mother passes on that immunity to her child. It passes on to keep them from getting sick. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a learning, it's an intelligent memory. T2 immunity is if you step on, you get a splinter, and what your body, it goes into there, your body recognizes it and immediately attacks it with an inflammatory response there. And so what ends up happening is that that's what, when I look at, and the reason why I'm going to talk about vaccines for a second is because when people look at vaccines, they don't think about that. But what we're doing is, the way vaccines work is they stimulate this inflammatory T2 response. So every single time somebody's getting injected, there's an inflammatory response that happens in their body, not just because we injected something from the outside in, but we're also injecting aluminum and thimerosal, mercury, and all of these other things that the body doesn't even know what to do with there, which are also known inflammatory products there. So what we start looking at is that, does this T2 response work? No, it's temporary. And in fact, this just came out a little while ago, this year, and when they actually looked at the effectiveness, when they just had a mumps outbreak at University of Iowa, they found that 98% of the kids had already been vaccinated that got the mumps, had already been vaccinated for the mumps. Only there was three people that had never been vaccinated that got the mumps, and 98% of the people had already been vaccinated for the mumps. That's why they say we need to have a third shot. And guess what there's going to be next? A fourth shot. And eventually, because it's a temporary immunity, it was never designed to last the rest of your entire lifetime. The only time that you get lifetime immunity is having that learning immunity, that type 1. And you know what? I'm sorry. It's not comfortable sometimes to be sick, but that's how your body learns. So we can't let somebody else do the So the reason why I bring this up is this was a patient, and she's 17 years old. This was her x-ray that I had taken. And you can see that it's kind of black right here. It just looks normal. This was her. You see these big areas right here? That's all bowel gas right there. This was her. She got her Gardasil, and then she started feeling sick, having digestive issues. This was taken 2 weeks after she got her shot there. Literally, her intestines were in an incredibly inflamed place immediately after that shot. This isn't just like I read it in a journal. This is somebody that's laying on the table in front of me there.
What is Gardasil?
Gardasil, it's a cervical cancer vaccine. So then we start looking, and I'm just going to fly through this, but you guys might have heard of Dr. Andrew Wakefield and the whole controversy of autism and vaccines, and they're like, well, his thing's been retracted. Well, has anybody ever read the study? Because I have. I'll just tell you, the only reason why they retracted it, not because the scientific data in there was wrong, but because it was how they said how he performed the studies. He didn't get informed consent from the people he was actually doing the study on. It wasn't that the data was wrong. It was just that he didn't get informed consent from the parents that he was studying. And his question was this. He goes, look, I'm a gastroenterologist, and I'm seeing all these kids coming in, and they're having brain issues. But what I'm noticing is that they're also having a lot of gut issues there. And he never even said that the vaccines caused that. He just said, these are the things that I'm noticing here, and he just decided to publish it. But people took that, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's something here, and they squashed it immediately. So the good news is that human beings are different than chickens, because when they are actually studying the chickens, what they do know is that when they vaccinate a chicken, it actually causes ulceration and inflammation in the chickens. And so they're studying ways to be able to try to protect the chicken's intestines, because when they get their vaccines in the chicken coop, it actually damages their intestines. They get sick, and when they get sick, they can't grow as quickly, and then they lose money. So what they're doing is they're testing it. But the good thing is we're not animals. We're not living creatures. We're different than chickens. So then we come back here, and 4 years later, Dr. Wakefield, the discredited author, is actually writing a same study about potential virogenic pathogen mechanisms for inflammatory bowel disease. He's talking about vaccines again. I thought he was discredited there. So what I want you to understand is that we're talking about, and this is big because there's 74 different vaccines before you turn 18, but the average person is going to get a flu shot every single year, and they're going to get multiple shingles shots, and they're going to get, you name it, they're going to keep adding it into it, because how do you keep profits going up without having, there's 270 something vaccines in the works to actually be produced right now. Just so you know, anything with an itis means inflammation. So I could only fit a little bit on here, but there's all kinds of itises as known side effects of just, this is from the white sheet that goes in the package insert for just the MMR vaccine there. So I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm telling you to start asking questions, to start thinking there. Parkinson's, just as a kind of an interesting thing, when we start to think about inflammation, Parkinson's disease, a neurogenic disease that's autoimmune, where the body starts to attack itself, what they're actually finding is that the gut microbiome, and this was only one of 20 articles that I found on Parkinson's that have come out in the last 2 years. But when we start looking at this was just in May of this year, what they found is that in Parkinson's disease, constipation associated, it's a neurodegenerative problem in the enteric nervous system. Maybe it's not just a brain issue, maybe it's an enteric nervous system issue that causes inflammation and oxidative stress and leaky gut syndrome that's affecting the brain and affecting the nervous system. We're starting to ask some questions now. Now we're starting to go. Maybe we start looking at the GMOs in our food. We start looking at a GMO. Think about this. The Bt toxin that's out there, when we eat it, right? So if what they find is that mothers that eat that eat genetically modified food, it actually goes in their mouth, goes through their whole intestinal system. In their child, that if they're pregnant while they're eating it, they will actually find that they can actually do blood tests and find that the Bt toxin is actually in that child from the food that the mother was eating. Literally, we're passing this down to our children. We know the Bt toxin actually affects inflammation in the gut there. So just so you know, if you have heard there was the biggest experiment on GMO food. Did you guys ever hear about it? Literally, it's you. It literally is you. You are the biggest experiment, because most countries in the world have completely banned GMO foods for human consumption. But the problem is we're feeding it to the cows, which we eat the cow stuff, just like the child got it from the mother. We eat the cow, we eat the toxin, and it goes into our children also. So we have to have better thoughts of where we're going. And when they look at pigs that just ate genetically modified corn, severe inflammation of the stomach and intestines, abnormal uterine growth there. Do you know anybody that's had abnormal uterine growth starting to happen? It's happening more and more. Think of the hysterectomy rates that are happening right now. And then fructose. Holy mackerel. Like I posted a video the other day. Fructose, actually what they find is they actually did a study, and they actually looked at, you're much more likely to get cirrhosis of your liver by eating fructose on a regular basis than drinking alcohol. That's not a free rein to go drink. But what it is to show you the damage, and they're seeing children in 18 to 25-year-old range that actually have cirrhosis of the liver because they've eaten so much fructose there. Fructose is part of sugar. You have the glucose and the fructose. So when you're asking me questions, hey, what about agave? Fructose. What about honey? Fructose. What about fruits? Fructose. Like the problem is fructose doesn't have the fiber with it to bind it. That's the biggest challenge. And the mercury concentration is 250 times the legal limit. And mercury is like a neurotoxin, and it creates chronic inflammation in the intestines. So you have to be able to watch those things there. So leaky gut affects the whole body. It affects your adrenal glands. It affects your joints, because we get swelling and aching. And a lot of times people are like, why does my whole body hurt? It's not your knees, it's not your ankles, it's not your back, it's your gut. Look at your gut first. Look at what's going into your mouth and how it's coming out. You have thyroid? Don't look at your thyroid. Your thyroid never did anything to you, right? The receptors on the thyroid gland are essentially the same as the gluten receptors. So when you're eating gluten, it goes to the thyroid gland, it attaches to those receptors. Your body sees that there's a threat on those receptors, and it starts attacking your thyroid. It's not your thyroid's fault. It's not your body's fault. We have to take responsibility for our health there. So here are some of the symptoms. Think about this: acne, allergies, arthritis, autism, autoimmune diseases, celiac disease, Crohn's disease, cystic fibrosis, eczema, environmental illness, food allergies, hives, inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, multiple food sensitivities, psoriasis, schizophrenia, lupus, and ulcerative colitis. If you have any of these symptoms, please consult your doctor before you continue to take this medication. Right? You know what I mean? Like, does that sound like one of those things that you see on TV of like, if you're taking this and you're having these as side effects, stop doing it. Well, stop doing it. Stop doing the things that create their leaky gut. So what we need to do is we need to remove the bad foods, replace them with good foods, and the bad foods are our sugars, our processed foods, and our rancid fats. Have you guys ever heard of me talk about the three things? Sugars, fats, and toxins, right? I'm always going to be talking about sugars, fats, toxins, sugars, fats, toxins. Second of all, replace them with good foods. Foods that focus on fresh vegetables. Like there's nothing, vegetables have fiber in them. Vegetables have nutrients in them. That's how you replenish the things that you use there. Low sugar fruits like your berries. Low sugar fruits like like things that have a lot of fiber, like the Granny Smith apples. Lean proteins. It doesn't mean that you have to go now. This is not the Atkins diet where you get to go eat ribs for breakfast, right? Bologna and bacon are not considered healthy foods. That's why Dr. Atkins died of a heart attack, right? Because he followed his own diet there. And that's why when we look at the core plan in one of the gut that we put together a kit, but it has the core and advanced plan in there. Just follow the core or the advanced plan. The advanced plan is designed to reduce gut inflammation. Oh, I thought it was for weight loss. Yeah, it's for weight loss because when you follow that, you also lose weight. Oh, I thought it was for fixing my diabetes. Yeah, it's the same thing. Does that make sense? Healthy eating actually fixes all the problems there. There's no one diet for a condition. There's diet to be healthy, and when you're healthy, you don't get sick. The third thing is to replace the probiotics. Now here's the little catch. What do most people do? They're like, oh, I have a gut issue. I tried probiotics, that didn't work. But they haven't done anything over here. So you have to do this, and then you rebalance with your probiotics right here. It's not, you can't supplement for bad health. You can't supplement for bad choices there. So this is what the average, what they call the Eat Well plate. This is the Food Standards Agency. And you have a little bit of fruits and vegetables. You have a whole bunch of rice, potatoes, and pizza there. You have a whole bunch of milk in there, and you have foods that you can have sugars and trans fats. This is considered healthy, just so you know. This is what the government put out in the United Kingdom. Now, we've all been to the UK or heard how bad their food is, and it truly is, okay? But the point is that this is what the average person would think, hey, that's a healthy diet, right? So we'd also look at this and be like, hey, I just want to feed my family. I love spaghetti and meatballs. This is all gluten. This is all the sugars that are in the sauces there. And where does the meat come from that's in there? Remember, you eat bad meat, you become bad. You are what you ate. Okay? So we look at this. Well, I grew up on spaghetti and meatballs. Really? Well, look where you are right now. Are you having the health that you want? And if not, maybe we need to make some changes. This is our Friday lunch. Maybe it's our Wednesday lunch. We have trans fats. We know that trans fats create inflammation in the intestines for a minimum of 51 days after we eat them there. They interfere with the nutrients getting in and out of the cells there. So that French fry that you decided to have, yeah, it's going to affect you for a minimum of the next 51 days. What about the carbohydrates in the burger? How about where does the burger come from there? And you know what? There is some lettuce there. I don't know if it's organic, but there might be pesticides on there which will create the. By the way, did you guys know that one of the biggest challenges with GMOs is that when they actually, when people consume a GMO, the GMO was designed to do two things. Number one, it was designed to kill bugs. And the way that it killed bugs that would eat the crops is by rupturing their digestive system. Interesting. Second thing is it was designed to you could actually spray a ton of pesticides on a crop and it wouldn't kill the crop. So it was resistant to the pesticides. So you could just douse it with chemicals and the crops wouldn't die, and the bugs that ate it, that would actually eat the food, would actually die. There was 25 bugs that they focused on when they were developing them. 16 of them now are actually immune to the Monsanto's product there. So 16 of the 25 are now immune, and we have over 280 million farmed acres with GMO crops right now. Think about that. Hey, by the way, if this is your annual celebration for your birthday, you're going to have fewer birthdays, right? Just look at that. So it's all fried. I don't know where that pork comes from there. Literally, can I get an extra, this is a little margarine up there for you. And don't forget about the perfect helping of syrup there. And then a little Bojangles. So, but I don't even know what that is. I really don't. I actually found this one on the internet because I was like, what is the grossest thing that I could ever imagine? Having a soda with some sort of gluten rice concoction fried in gluten with like trans fats, with a GMO chicken like that's been like had to been vaccinated just to stay alive. And did you know that they could actually, a normal chicken to get to market takes 16 weeks, and they can now get it to market in 5 weeks. How do you get a chicken to market in 5 weeks? There's got to be something wrong there. All right, so remember the two brains in the body. This is this thing that you always want to be thinking about. So when you're eating something, you're feeding your body, but you also have to think is whatever you eat feeds your brain, and whatever goes in here feeds your brain, and whatever you think up here is going to affect how you digest your food there. And that's the one thing I want to get. You can't separate them. So if you're like, well, I just like sugar makes me feel so good. Well, no, it doesn't. What it does, it makes you feel so bad, so that you eat sugar so you can feel good again. Does that make sense? Like you create the inflammation that makes your brain feel bad, and so your brain feels bad. And the microbiome, like you're looking for something in your world to make you feel good. And what's interesting is, by the way, sugar raises insulin, which gets serotonin into your brain, which is your happy hormone. But then the problem is that it's just like the cells in your body, they become immune to the insulin. So then you have to have more and more sugar to get more and more serotonin into your brain. You'll never be able to eat enough chocolate to make yourself happy, just so you know. That's a rule. So the serotonin, the feel-good hormone, the biggest thing that I want you to understand is that it's in your intestines there. It has a calming effect on your mind and your brain. And serotonin affects your mood, memory, ability to learn, have appetite, arousal, aggression, sexual desire. Literally, when we have it, if you look at the social behavior and sleep issues there, sexual desire, and arousal and aggression. Think about the guy that walked into the church last week, right? Do you think he had some serotonin issues there? And I was listening to one of the announcers, like, wait, we should have been on medication, and that wouldn't have happened. No, what he probably should have been doing is like actually doing something that didn't interfere. Like do you think that if somebody was getting adjusted and they were eating right, does that make sense? And he was coming to surge class Monday, Wednesday, and Saturdays. If he had detoxed, he was taking his probiotics, his vitamin D, and that he was actually like taking some time to meditate every day, do you think that guy would have walked into a church and shot people? No. Like healthy people don't do stuff like that. Only sick people do that. So the big thing is, and this is what we're going to be talking about at Recipe Night. So on Monday, like I'm going to do something for Recipe Night. We're all going to bring recipes. We're also going to eat, but I'm also going to show you guys like how to juice and like answer all your questions about juicing. So I'm going to be juicing. We're going to be sharing some juicing there. I'm going to show you how to juice turmeric. I'm going to show you how I make my killer juice. Because one of the things that we're going to start on this next challenge is going to be like we're going to start incorporate juicing into it. It's going to be a kind of a juice fast initially. And then we'll break into like the advanced plan there because I want to kickstart for the holidays. My goal is that nobody in here gets sick over the holidays. Like this is like we are healthy for the holidays rather than in a place of fear for the holidays there. So the other thing I'm going to teach you how to do is like to make your own kimchi or to because one of the biggest things that you can do is to get like your bacteria from the foods that you eat. There's actually a book that just came out. It's called The Dirt Cure, and they basically said like our problem is that we don't ever get dirty anymore. Like the bacteria in the ground, like if you were like walking as a hunter-gatherer, you'd be like, oh, look at that, that's a strawberry. And you probably wouldn't even be able to say that. You'd be like, and you reach down and you pick up the strawberry, right, and you put it in your mouth. You wouldn't like take it to the stream and wash it off. You just put it in there. There'd be bacteria on there, and that would nourish your intestines there. And so what we want to do is we need to get our bacteria from the foods that we eat. And so we need to stop being so clean. You don't have to like be gross. Does that make sense? But the problem also is that we're so focused on being clean that we use hand sanitizers. Do you guys know that hand sanitizers are antibiotic? They literally, there's triclosan in there that's actually a carcinogen. That like every time you put hand sanitizer on there, there's a carcinogen that you're putting into your body, and it actually is an antimicrobial you're affecting your body on a daily basis. I have one that's up there. It's called with Thieves. It's just with an essential oil that actually cleans it, but it's not an antibiotic. So nourish your immune system. Stay away from the immune downers there. Like, just so you know, if it's in a box, it's an immune downer. Okay, if it's in a package, it's probably going to be an immune downer. Salisbury steak and gravy and macaroni and cheese, that's an immune downer, I guarantee you. Like, there is no healthy choice in a box. Does it make sense? And so, and Eggos, like, criminy sakes, they taste good, right? But they're designed, because remember we talked about the bliss point? Like they actually have a bliss point at which they know what the right hormones in your head will actually start firing when you get the right amount of salt, right amount of sugar, right amount of sweetness, right amount of sour. They hit that bliss point and you're like, oh, I like that. And that's how they get it to go. By the way, the bliss point for potato chips is 3 pounds, just in case you ever wanted to know. Somebody was asking me the other day, they're like, does your wife ever tell you to shut up? And like, she did today in the car. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to share this tonight. And she's like, let's just talk. All right. So immune downers, anything with wheat in it, okay? It's going to be an immune downer. And you might as well start now at this point in your life, no matter how old you are, and just get rid of the wheat out of your diet. And there's just absolutely no place in your diet there for me. My wife actually made gluten-free French bread. She went to her friend's house and they taught her how to make, she's French, they made French baguettes the other day out of gluten-free flour. Like, you can do it, you can remove the wheat. You don't have to starve yourself, you don't have to never have bread, but you can also don't have to have it as part of your experience. Yeah.
What about like kombucha and spelt, the heirloom ones? Are those?
Yeah, some of the heirloom ones, but those things are fine. But really, the grains, like looking at rice.
Brown rice too?
Yeah, it's because the problem is there's so much carbohydrates in it.
Yeah.
Brown rice has like fiber on it, which is better than white rice. But you start looking at, if you look at the carbohydrate concentration for a cup of rice, it's incredibly high. It's inflammatory there. We look at oats and corn and barley, so really looking at a lot of these wheats and trying to minimize them. So if you're feeling starving, why don't you try something green like vegetables? You can fill yourself up. Do you know how many Brussels sprouts you can eat? I just, like literally last night, I had a bowl and I was completely full and I wasn't missing anything. Does that make sense? I had a little bit of salmon and Brussels sprouts. But no, the thing is that you start changing your mentality that you're eating for energy, you're eating for performance, you're eating for mental clarity, you're eating to be able to spend time with your daughter when she has her great-grandkids. Does that make sense? Like, you're eating for your future, you're not eating for your now. Dairy, milk, yogurt, and cheese, huge inflammatories. In fact, they're one of the number one food allergens that we have. In fact, if anybody ever says, hey, like I'm having like congestion, by the way, did you know that if you're eating and your nose starts running, that's a sign that you're allergic to what you're eating. Have you ever had that happen where you're eating something like, why is my nose running? Or, where you start sneezing while you're eating? That's an indicator that your body is so intelligent, it's like, stop it. So cut out the dairies, the milks, and the cheeses. Unless they're raw, if they're raw cheeses or raw milks, that's okay. But make it a small part of your diet. It's not one of the 4 basic food groups. Yes?
Is non-GMO, is organic automatically non-GMO?
No. No, that's not. It's just not
How
sprayed.
about goat cheese?
Can you have quinoa?
Quinoa, yeah. I think you definitely can have quinoa. I like quinoa.
Okay.
I'm just gonna take out the donuts. Whoever loves Stan's donuts, I'm sorry, but literally, like nobody's ever felt good after that second donut, right? You go to church, you're like, I'm gonna have one donut, and then nobody's looking. You take the second donut hole, and you're like, why did I have it, right? So the problem is the sugars are actually, whether they're natural or artificial, sugar will suppress your immune system for 8 hours after you eat it. It'll reduce your white blood cell count by up to 75% for 4 hours. So think about you're going to that holiday party and that person sneezes on you, but you've been spending all night at the cookie table. It's not their fault that they got you sick, right? It's your fault that you ate those cookies that suppressed your immune system. You have to be able to receive that. Nourishing your body. Step 3, this is critical. And one of the things that sometimes what we need to do is give our bodies a break. And I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting, and I've talked to you guys about this before, but I literally, my last meal of the day, well tonight it'll be a little bit later, but my last meal of the day is usually at 8 o'clock, and my first meal of the day is usually somewhere between 12 and 1. And the reason being is that it takes 12 hours for your body to digest food. So in that time, digesting food is it takes a tremendous amount of energy. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, and your body will actually divert energy away from your immune system to actually digest food there. And so what also happens is that one of my goals is to decrease insulin sensitivity. I don't want to have insulin issues. In fact, I just got my blood test because I like to check on it every couple, because I'm kind of anal like that. And my blood sugar was right at 87, and it's a little bit higher. It used to be at 85, but I function at 85. Most people would be like, oh my gosh, my blood sugar's at 85. Like, I'd be hypoglycemic, I'd be falling on the ground. Does it look like it? No, like I'm just getting ready to go, and I'm already getting signs from like my staff to stop. But the point is this, is that you can have sugar or fat. Your fat doesn't raise your blood sugar, your insulin levels there. And so what we want to really look at is we're going to put together, part of the challenge is we're going to teach you guys how to do intermittent fasting. And in that intermittent fasting process, what that will allow you to do is to give your body a chance to actually rest. Now, some people, they say they do fasting, I fast 1 day a week. Well, I don't have that discipline. So I choose to fast an extra 4 hours a day, and then I multiply it times 6, and that's 24 hours, and I fast 1 day a week. That's just kind of working it there. But if you look at what happens, appetite control increases, mental focus, who wants that? Stable energy levels, blood sugar control happens there, insulin sensitivity, cellular turnover and repair. Literally, your body kills bad cells, and it repairs them with good cells there. Human growth hormone goes up. Wow, you mean you've been going to the gym, and you've been eating like no food, like just these little carbohydrate things from, what is it, like Nutri-Slim or whatever, the place is, Weight Watchers, and they have all the carbohydrates, and you've been going to the gym, you can't figure out why you can't lose weight. It's probably because A, you're eating Weight Watchers, and B, that you're not producing growth hormone, which actually builds muscle there. Increased fatty oxidant, like fat burning there, and your capacity to resist stress. Wow. Wasn't that one of the things that we wanted to try to do, was to actually resist stress? And so that's one of the reasons why I'm going to encourage you to start investigating. You don't have to do it for the rest of your life. But maybe what if we go into this holiday season saying, hey, look, we're going to be the leanest that we've ever been on January 1st, so that we don't have to be the people that are trying to make New Year's resolutions to lose weight. What if we're going to be the healthiest that we've ever been January 1st, rather than this is going to be the year that I get my health back? What if we try to have our brain working at the best that it possibly can January 1st, rather than just trying to get over a hangover on January 1st. Does that make sense? So that's one of my goals. And so there's a couple different ways that we can do it. First way, 16-hour fast, 8-hour fed. I eat a ton in these 8 hours, by the way. If you're crazy, you can do a 20-hour fast and a 4-hour fed. If you've never done intermittent fasting, I'm going to suggest that you actually stick with the 16 or even a 12-hour one, even if you just go 12 hours. From 7 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning. That means that there's no trips to, guess what, the refrigerator just before you go to bed. That my body needs ice cream to go to sleep. No, what that does is that raises your serotonin levels, which calms you down. And when it calmed you down, guess what ended up happening? In the middle of the night, you woke up anyways. And when you woke up, it was because your blood sugar level was low, and your brain's like, oh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. What's going on? And you're like, I want to go to sleep. And you're like this. But then the problem is now your brain's starving for food in the middle of the night. And that's one of the biggest things. People have issues sleeping in the middle of the night, and they can't figure out what it is, but it's a blood sugar issue there. So what we do is we just need to make sure we nourish our body with good fats. And there's all kinds of them. I use MCT oil. MCT oil is like a good fat. It gives me a lot of energy. I have my smoothies. I have my whey protein there. I do eat some raw cheeses, but you can't really get them. So I have friends, it's probably going to go online, but I have friends send the raw cheeses to me from other states where you can actually get raw cheese, because we're like the only state that you can't get raw cheese.
I saw that at Sprouts.
Yeah, that one right there. That's why I put it up there. Yeah, so that one's out there. They raise it to the body temperature of the cow there. But really, like your salmon, and this is the seductive thing, right? Salmon. Just know that farm-raised and wild-caught are very different. Not just in price, because the wild-caught's going to be twice as much as the farm-raised one. So you're like, well, it's at least I'm eating salmon. No, it doesn't have the omega-3s in there. That the whole reason why you're eating the salmon in the first place is to get the omega-3s. It's not even in there. Oh, by the way, they're fed grain, and so that they actually are inflamed, and they're sick fish. And to give them actually a color, a farm-raised fish is actually white. Did you know that? Like salmon is actually white until they give the food coloring to them using the Merck's Salmo fan that actually changes the color. And that's why some of the farm-raised you can see different colors, because they can choose what they want their fish color to look like there. So I would rather have you go vegetarian than eat bad meat. You can't undo the damage caused by bad meat there. Last thing is supplementing your immunity. This is huge. one of the things that that we talked about, whey protein, right? Whey protein will balance. If somebody's got digestive issues, whey protein is awesome. If they have, if somebody has, whey protein actually has glutathione in it, which stimulates natural digestion, has good protein structures in there and good fats in there. It's one of the ways that when I do start, like if I'm going to do workouts or if I'm going to do things, I'll have a shake pretty much every day. And what it does is it gives me a nice balance, and it's a great way to start the day. But it's a great way to build your immune system there too. Second thing is that I'm just going to go through this. Don't forget about the kids. Like, I can't tell you how many parents would actually buy supplements for themselves, and they leave their kids at home, not like with they eating pizza and hot dogs and all these things. They're like, they're fine, but they're always sick, and they get tubes in their ears, and they got this constant, well, he's got asthma and he's got allergies. The kids are the ones that they're going to be sicker than we are. And so I would rather that you spend your money on your kids and keep them healthy rather than spending money on yourself and then letting your kids get sick later on when you're not responsible for them. So the probiotic pattern detox, multis, every kid should have. That's why we put together this whole line there. Vitamin D, I can't tell you enough. I'm actually, sometime this month, I put together 101 reasons to take vitamin D. Literally, I'm just going to put it on a PowerPoint there, and at the end of the time, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to take vitamin D for the rest of my life. But basically, the big thing is it's anti-inflammatory. Oh, by the way, it changes your DNA. It expresses DNA better. Oh, by the way, vitamin D, they find that it helps with mood. Wait a minute, so it's anti-inflammatory and it helps with mood. Oh, that's really interesting. See, if I'm inflamed, in fact, the American Academy of Psychiatry actually just came out with something in which they said that they're going to change, they're looking at changing right now the cause of depression from being a brain transmitter issue to an inflammatory condition. They're thinking of causing it because they're basing it as an inflammatory condition. The good news is the reason, because they did studies, they tried anti-inflammatories in people that actually felt better. But everybody feels better than taking antidepressants anyways, because when they compare antidepressants with placebos win anyways. So looking at your vitamin D, about 1,000 milligrams for every 35 pounds as your body weight there. Max GI, and the reason why we formulate this, I'm going to tell you, Max GI is great because what it does is that the biggest thing that it has in the formula is it has the digestive enzymes in there. It's not just a probiotic. It has digestive enzymes, it has the probiotics, but it also has essential oils and minerals in there to actually soothe an inflamed gut. And that's why when we put this together, it wasn't like just throwing a whole bunch of bacteria in there, but it's about supporting function. It's not about treating disease, it's about supporting proper function. And what it does is it actually tightens down this is actually a cross-section, the junction of the cells. And that's the big key. The other thing that I'm going to talk about is glutamine. And this is the first time I've ever talked about glutamine in here, but glutamine is incredibly important to help repair intestinal cell walls. So if you have damage, one of the ways that you can know that if you have a gut issue is if you got gas and it smells, always, that's an intestinal issue there. You have chronic inflammation in there. If you clear out a room, then you have a gut issue there, okay? But the thing is that we talk about asthma, allergies, eczema, oh, I have these allergies. That means we have a gut issue, and so glutamine is incredibly important to be able to actually help repair that. So sometimes we're maintaining it, sometimes we're repairing it, and it's critical. It's really critical for healing there, okay? Last thing. I was just going to talk about the food pyramid, and I just wanted to remind you guys on this. This is what the common one says. Eat fats up here in the smallest bit. Eat your breads and cereals down here as the biggest part of your life. This was the old food pyramid there. Okay? That's what got us sick. 10% of the people in the United States have a chronic digestive disorder right now that they've actually seen a doctor for. Probably the other 90% don't even know that they have a digestive disorder, and it's from this type of diet there. And so what we want to start to look at is changing that away. So a lot of times people put meats at the bottom and they put all these proteins. Yeah, this will change some of the hormones in there, but what we really want to look at is having less than, we have about 60% fat in our diet, 30% proteins, and then this is where we're starting to get into what we call a ketogenic realm. If you're trying to really balance yourself out, we've also done some classes on this, so it should be online on the ketogenic diet, but this is a different option there. But really start looking at how we can get more fat, which will reduce the inflammation and help repair, give you good hormones there. We keep our proteins less, and like the 5% leafy green vegetables, that's a lot of leafy green vegetables, just so you know. Like of your calories, if you're trying to get calories from lettuce, it's really hard. So it seems like you're saying, well, don't eat greens. Yeah, no, you eat tons of greens, but they don't have calories in them. Like you don't have calories in like a leaf of spinach. Does that make sense? There is some, but most of what we know about the calories is most of the carbohydrates, when there's a fiber, it cancels out the carbohydrates, so it's a net negative thing. So you can eat like a ton of stuff and talk a ton. The last thing is that we have magnesium. Magnesium is huge. If somebody has constipation issues and you've heard of people take Calm or magnesium to help them go to the bathroom, it's only because it allows their intestines to start working right. And if they're constipated, that means they can't even go to the bathroom because the intestines don't work right. It helps relax muscles and allows you to sleep at night there. So just a reminder, we have the advanced workshop. We have recipes up there. One of the things that we do is we have people come to the workshop at the recipe night. They bring a recipe. It's one of the best things that we do in the office because we get to bond as a community and to share ideas, but also to learn. And so that's going to be on Monday night. Oh, by the way, last one was sleep and mood. I got that out of order, sorry. Sleep and mood formula. This is a huge one for people that are having sleep issues, but it also raises the serotonin, which will help to get the intestines moving there and get the brain working in there. So it reduces stress and it raises serotonin so your digestive system can actually start working better there. This was the last thing. So I'm almost done, I promise. But what I did, and we're doing something a little bit different, is that we basically put together what we call the gut check guide to success here. It's a 30-day gut check challenge. Okay? It has what to do in the morning, what to do in the afternoon. What we're really going to have you do is during the first part of the gut check challenge, we got to heal and repair the gut. And so if you think you have a great gut, do it. If you think you have a bad gut, do it. Because how healthy do you want to be? Does that make sense? At what point do you say, I'm healthy enough, I don't need to do anymore? And so what we want to do is the first 3 days, yes? Oh, he's just smiling at me.
I made it a little different, so.
I was looking there.
Okay.
So one of the big thing, and so are you going to email this or is it just going to be on the website, Vanessa? Is it going to be on the website? Or
It's going to be on the website, but
Okay.
if you buy a bundle tonight, we'll give you the challenge
Okay.
here, but yeah.
Okay, good. So I basically put the whole challenge together for you. It's outlined just so you know exactly what to do. You can set, what I was going to talk about is bone broth, and we'll also talk about that at recipe night tomorrow night. So just really in closing, there's 3 things. Number 1, recipe night. I want you to be at recipe night to be able to take the information and apply it there. That'll be the time where we can answer questions. You kind of work through the stuff, you sift through the stuff. I'll put my notes up online. You can read it. There's, as you know, there's always 10 times more than the notes than I actually even speak about. Second thing is that as one of the new things that I started carrying is green vibrance. This is something that is what I basically changed my greens. This is one of the best products that I've ever seen, and you can get it at Whole Foods if you want. I just have it here, same price. I just wanted to make sure that if people had access to it. But it's a really big key in the gut challenge. Sometimes people like to juice. Other people are like, I just can't juice. I just don't have the time. Then you can just use Green Vibrance and do your challenge that way. The other thing is that I drink greens all the time, and the reason being is they make my body more alkaline. They allow they literally reduce inflammation in my intestinal system. So I'll have 2 or 3 of them a day. It doesn't matter because guess what? There's no calories in this, right? And so what we're doing is that to be able to support you guys, I have my wife make up 12 packages for people that are in a health crisis or really want to just dive all in. It's 20% off for the gut checkbook there. And there's the magnesium, there's the sleep and mood. Magnesium to help the intestines start working better and to help stimulate digestion, the sleep and mood to help for sleep and to be able to increase the tryptophan levels. You got the vitamin D in there, and you got the Max GI, and it also has the glutamine in there. And it has a nutrition plan book. If you already have one, give it to somebody that's living on the SAD diet there. Everything else is just 10% as we always do. If you're a patient, thank you for being here. If you've never been to our office, I encourage you to get your spine checked because if you don't know what your spine looks like, how can your body ever adapt to stress? It makes no sense to me. We check everything in our bodies. We check our eyes. We check our heart. we check our blood pressure, we check our blood sugar, we check everything because we want to be healthy. Why wouldn't you check your spine and your nervous system, which is the connection between your brain and your gut there? And so if you've never been to our office before, just talk to Vanessa at the front desk there, and she'll give you a card, a certificate to come in and get checked. And we're only charging $40 for it, and it's basically, that's nothing to be able to find out exactly where you are. I'm going to stay around if you guys have questions. I appreciate you for being here. I hope this time was valuable, and I really apologize for 25 minutes of your time, but I hope that last 25 minutes was important too. Have a great night. At least I didn't go 2 hours. All right. Awesome as always. Thank you. All right. So good to see you twice in one day.
Do we have some of the stuff already? Did you learn?